Get into it. So here we go. Number one. Number one would be investing in actual watercolor paper. Okay? I don't mean going out and buying professional grade watercolor paper. I just mean buying any type of paper meant for watercolors specifically. If you try to use watercolors on regular paper or maybe even in your sketchbook, for some mixed media sketchbooks are also not very capable of holding watercolor paper, so you are just gonna end up making it harder for yourself, and I don't want you to get frustrated and not want to paint with watercolors ever again because you're finding it too hard due to the type of paper that you're using. Myself, I really love using thicker paper, 140 pound up. I really like using Canson watercolor paper, which is not what you're seeing me use here in this video. In this video, I'm using a much thinner paper, and I didn't tape it down because I usually don't tape down my sheets because I use thicker paper and I rarely paint backgrounds. So for me, I don't find it necessary at times to tape it down if you're using thicker paper, but just make sure that it's watercolor paper, guys, okay? And if you do get thinner paper, just buy some masking tape and tape it down onto a thick cardboard or just the table where you're working on, and then very gently remove it once it's all dry, okay? So number two would be taking the time to think about your colors and actually planning your colors before starting to paint. So I cannot tell you how many pretty good drawings that I took time to do that I ruined in the beginning just because I didn't take the time to think about what colors I was gonna use. I just started using any colors that I saw in my palette and trying to replicate what I was seeing either in front of me or in a picture. And at the end, my paintings didn't look cohesive. There was no harmony to them, and they just looked very amateur. Take the time to think about colors that look well together. Think about how you're gonna create your shadows. And always, always, always keep in mind that you're trying to create a picture that is one same composition, that is going to look good together and to transmit harmony. Color is a very important part of creating a cohesive and professional looking composition. In the beginning, and even after, even if you know a lot, I really recommend limiting your color palette. It can be even 5 or 6 colors at most. Number 3 would be keep pencil sketches light. So in the beginning, when you are creating your sketch or drawing that you're going to be painting on, make sure to be gentle on your watercolor paper and keep it as light as possible, because the more graphite and the more pressure that you have on your watercolor paper, the more your painting runs the risk of getting dirty while you're painting. Remember that watercolors are meant to be transparent. If you really apply a lot of pressure in your pencil marks, it runs the risk of being visible at the end. So whatever graphite you leave on your paper, when you are painting, you're just gonna smudge it. You're gonna dirty up your whole painting. So be careful with that. Something very useful that I've learned in this last year is to use water-soluble gray colored pencils to make my initial sketch. This helps a lot because your pencil lines erase throughout the painting process, which ensures a very clean outcome at the end. If you're already comfortable, if you have already good drawing skills and good observation skills, I really recommend using water-soluble gray colored pencil to make your initial sketch. Number 4. And perhaps the most difficult, at least it was for me when I first started, is to save the whites. There's definitely some planning required. You need to very carefully pinpoint where are the lightest parts in the picture or the reference that you're using. These white areas will have to be left with no paint on them at all. You need to work around these areas and save them throughout the whole painting process. How do you do this? What you can do is make sure that you include these white areas within your initial pencil sketch. Make sure that you create a sort of map for yourself when you are using a pencil to create your sketch. Make sure that you sketch out where these white areas are within your drawing. Something that you can do is use masking fluid. It requires more time, definitely. It's gonna make your whole process longer. But using masking fluid really ensures that those areas will not be touched by your paint while you're painting. If you don't want to use masking fluid, then you have to be super careful not to get into those white areas throughout your painting process. Number 5 is to always start with very watery, transparent paint. When you are starting to paint, you want to start very light and start adding darker and darker paint as you go. Always making sure to keep the darkest values only in the areas where needed. This particular one was super difficult for me in the beginning, especially because I've always loved sort of pop art and artwork that has big blocks of flat color in them. So it's something that I always have to keep in mind when I am painting with watercolors. But it's super important. If you don't create those values, your painting is gonna be very flat. And since you can only get darker and not lighter with watercolors, once you start placing those dark values on your paper, you cannot go back. Sometimes you can fix certain mistakes with lifting, but it's not completely for sure that you're gonna be able to take out all that paint from the paper. Number 6 is let it dry. Watercolors require you to be patient, especially if you're trying to create a picture with realism in it. You have to wait for each layer to dry before starting to place another layer on top. I myself tend to be super impatient, and in the beginning I ruined a lot of paintings because I wanted to force myself to keep working on it while it was wet, and so I ended up damaging the paper, messing up with the paint colors, and I find it really helpful to work on pieces that have different elements in them that I can be working on. When one is still wet, I can work on another one, and so on. Jump around from place to place within the painting. Also, something else that you can do is just work on 2 pieces at the same time. If you get impatient and you want to keep working, just pull the other one out and work on that while the other one is drying. 7 is don't mix more than 2 to 3 colors together. So, as much as it's great for you to make and create your own colors, you have to sort of understand the color wheel very well when you are attempting to create new colors. I don't recommend ever using more than 3 colors at the same time because you risk your painting turning out muddy. Number 8 is clean brushes between colors. Especially if the colors are very different from each other, you want to make sure to swivel your brush in your water cup and make sure that the whole color is removed from your paintbrush before you go into the next area with the next color. Something that I find very handy is to keep a little piece of scrap watercolor paper beside me when I am painting. When I am going to paint a new area, I can make sure to test out my color on this little scrap piece of paper before using it on my actual painting. This ensures that the color is going to turn out the way I want it to. Number 9 is clean your water frequently. So please don't be lazy and stand up and change your water whenever you notice that it starts to get murky, because it can really affect how your paint turns out on your paper. It can start to become muddy and it can have a sort of dirty effect. Many artists use 2, 3, or some even 4 different cups of water when they are painting. Personally, I only use 2, but I have to remind myself frequently to go and change it. And finally, the 10th thing that I wish I would have known before I started painting with watercolors is to not let myself be swayed by the huge, beautiful watercolor palettes with 24 to 50 or however many different colors, because what matters most is the quality of the paint than the quantity of the paints. And also, if you're anything like me, you start buying these palettes and you notice sooner or later that you always end up using the same 6 to 8 different colors, and so many of the colors go wasted. So I recommend from the beginning investing a little bit in better quality watercolors. I really do think it's important and useful to do some research since the beginning and try to find a brand and a product that is good in both quality and price, because you're really able to experiment with materials that give you a little bit more manageability, that are easier to work with, so that you can start experimenting by yourself and find what you like and what you don't. I really don't think that buying these huge palettes with large amounts of color are going to be the best in the beginning, because you're going to be wasting a lot. 2 brands that I would recommend are Sakura Koi watercolor set. I got the one with the 24 colors in it, but the price was pretty good and the quality is pretty good as well. And another one that I really loved is the smaller 12 color Cotman Winsor and Newton set, and I really love those. Okay guys, thank you for watching. I hope you found this video helpful, and make sure to visit my website /blog ericalancaster.com. Also make sure to comment, like, and subscribe, and make sure to visit and add me on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and everything else. You can find my links right here. Thanks so much, and I hope to see you around.